All right, ask if you had any questions, just send them to me, and you did. So I'm going to start answering them. Here we go. Number one, does cultural background affect nonverbal communication? It sure does. Everything in body language is either that you see is either cultural or it's limbic. So it comes from your limbic system or it comes from the culture you're in. For example, when Americans say yes, they go like this. When someone from India says yes, they go like this. One time at the Entrepreneur Center there in Nashville, when I was the entrepreneur in residence, I trained entrepreneurs to be, when they pitched, how to use their body language to help them persuade the people they're pitching to like what they're talking about, to listen to them, and to want to ask them questions. So there was this one guy in there, and before I would take on one of these startups, I would sort of vet them and make sure that their product or service was good, that was going to work, they weren't going to rip anybody off, that this was really, if they were going to, somebody's going to give them a couple $1 million, I want to make sure that they were going to be able to pull off what they said they were going to be able to pull off. So this one guy I was talking to, he was from Bulgaria, and we're talking, and I said, so how long have you been in America? And he told me, and his English was great, really, really good English. And as we talked, I would ask him questions about, you live with anybody? And he would say, yeah, I live with my girlfriend. So he was shaking his head no as he was saying yes. So, and it wasn't a confirmation shake like, yeah, I live with her, and boy, she's the greatest. It was a really subtle thing. Yeah, I live with her. We've been lived together for 2 years. Something like that. It was really, really small. So I thought, well, I'll ask him something else in a couple minutes that I know the answer to. That should be a yes. And let me see how he reacts to that. So I saw a guy come in early today, or that day. I said, did you get in late today? And he said, no, I got in a little bit early today. So then again, he's saying no, but he's saying yes. Well, come to find out, anyone from Bulgaria, or not anyone, but I guess most everyone, when they say no, they do this. And when they say yes, they'll do that. This is no, and this is yes. So there you go. That's the cultural difference that you'll see in from Americans, what you're probably used to if you're from America. When you see someone say yes, you'll see this. If they say no, you'll see this. However, in Bulgaria, they don't do that. So it totally flipped me out. And I had to sort of train him out of that, because when people would ask him questions and he'd have to say, yes, that's true, he would say, yes, that's true. It was a confirmation shake, but the person watching it doesn't know that. All they know is they're seeing somebody shake their head no as they say yes, and they may not put together then, but that part of your brain, they'll let you know something's not right about something. That thing fires off and says, something's not right about this. I don't know what it is. And all of a sudden you've got this tiny little wall that starts adding bricks to that little wall that makes that person not trust you, not want to be involved with you, not asking you for the next meeting after this pitch. So yes, culture has a lot to do with body language and how you transmit your feelings and thoughts to someone else, how they take it in. Because if, for that example, you could be meaning yes, but you're saying no, and you could be meaning no, but you're saying yes with your body language. All right, let's go to number 2. Are there any specific areas of nonverbal communication you find fascinating or complex? I really like psychopaths, or the body language of psychopaths, when they're being questioned or when they're being interviewed, and especially before anyone is aware that they've done something they shouldn't have done and they're a psychopath. That behavior fascinates me. So that's one of my favorite things to watch and look at. Also, the healthcare industry, that's a good one as well, because you see people who are scared to death sometimes, and they come into the doctor's office and they're dealing with the things they're afraid of, not sure of, don't know about. And everything in their body language is very guarded. And it's so obvious when someone's afraid in the doctor's office or someone's confident. Someone can be waiting on someone is different than someone who's waiting to go in to see the doctor. And when the nurse or physician's assistant comes out to get them, how they react during all that, I always think that's fascinating, that kind of thing, to see those reactions, how that goes. So there's 2. What percentage of the population are psychopaths? A lot of psychopath stuff today. It's thought or suggested that about 10% of the people in the world are psychopaths. There's a really interesting study that just came out talking about how there are more women psychopaths than we thought there were. It's not just mainly men these days. There's a lot of women too. Fascinating study. I'll put a link in the notes below and you can go read it. It's really a great study on it. But I think it's about 10% right in there is what you hear anywhere from, 7% to 10% right in there. I'm going to go with 10 because for me, I'm aware of a lot of them. So maybe that's why I'm jaded toward more 10%. But it seems like there's a whole lot more of them than 7%. All right. Oh, and the guy you want to check out, there's a book called Without Conscience, and it's by Robert D. Hare. He's like the godfather of psychopaths. He's not a psychopath, but he's one of the ones that has done the best studies and the best writings on psychopaths as far as I'm concerned. And the book is called Without Conscience. And then the second book is called Snakes in Suits. That's a real good one. Get that one too, because it talks about psychopaths in business and what they do to make everything work for them in that business. And quite often it wrecks or destroys that business. So there's that. What does insulating mean when you talk about that on the behavior panel? Insulating is when someone's being questioned or someone's trying to question, but they're crying so much they won't answer anything. It's almost like, oh, I can't hear you because I'm crying, or they're just overwhelmed and they can't really talk because they're so overwhelmed. They insulate themselves from any questioning. It's like a big shield they put up by acting that way and treating whoever's talking to them that way. I'm just saying they whine and cry, but you can usually see through it because you don't see the expressions you should see of emotion on their face and their forehead. You don't see the grief muscle or any concern. You see fake concern and you see fake sadness, but you don't see any movement in the chin boss, usually this little area right down here. You don't see the mouth go down, the corners of it go down the way it should go when they're crying. A lot of times they won't even have tears. Sometimes they will, but a lot of times they won't. I did a whole video on that. Anyway, it's somewhere on this channel. And it's fascinating how people use it. And they're not aware that that's a tool or a tactic. They just start doing it. And it works a lot of the time, especially in situations where there's a TV reporter or something like that talking to them that is completely shut down and the reporter doesn't know how to get in there and talk to them, how to get through that. So there's that one. Oh, I remember. I'll tell you a story about this. One time I had to go talk to this guy who worked at a company. And he was an embezzler. He'd taken a bunch of money, they thought, and they were right. And as I talked to him, and before I went to talk, said we can't get this guy to talk. He's so upset. I'm starting to think that this may not be him because the person who's doing it because he's so upset. I said, well, let me go talk to him. So I go in and talk to him, and he's doing this whole. And as soon as I saw him, I knew it was fake. Everything was fake about it. He didn't no tears, no, and he had this Kleenex out and he was sniffing and pretending he's wiping stuff away. Nothing. And as he's crying, this fake cry, I keep asking questions and he's I can't even, and he's acting like he's breaking down, So finally I said, hey man, cut the shit. I know what you're doing. Tell me what's going on. Let's talk for a few minutes here. They've asked me to come in and talk to you, and that's what we're going to do. So let's get to this and find out what's going on. That's the only reason I'm here. I'm not going to arrest you. I'm not leaving here with you anything. I'm just here to find out why you did this. And the guy is all of a sudden he settles down really quickly. He says, well, here's what they think is happening. And he started talking normal. And I was like, oh, I got me one here. And I did. So, all right. Okay, what are the key indicators of stress in body language? There are a whole lot of them. There are tons of them. But it's when you see them in groups that let you know something's up. You'll see little things of stress like this. You'll see if someone talks, they'll do this. And that's an adapter. Adapters are the things we use to get rid of that built up stress and tension. It could be anything like this, because if you'll touch your face right there and do that, you'll feel that muscle tighten up a little bit and relax. That helps you relax. It's nothing big. It's just real small. You'll see people do that in interviews on the news and those types of things. Sometimes they'll do that and stretch their shoulder, or they'll do this, or when their arms are crossed, they'll be crossed tightly, and you'll see like their hand will grip their arm, that kind of thing. Quite often you'll see someone just pull on their ear, or they'll chew the side of their mouth, as you're talking to them. Those are adapters. That's how you get rid of that built up stress and tension. That lets you know if there's stress there. One of the big indicators of stress that you'll always see in those congressional hearings when someone is being they're put on the spot, and especially if it comes to ethics in those hearings, you'll see this. You'll see disappearing lips, or what I call stress mouth. When the lips just disappear, they go like this. And they'll look around and shake their head yes, and or they'll get real still and like that. So that's something to watch for as well. Because if you're talking to someone and you ask them a question, if there's something that's come up and you have to have an answer from them, and they start that, they go, there's stress, there's an issue there. Something's going on to make them do that. So keep that in mind as you're talking to people. All right. But at the same time, it doesn't mean they're lying. I forgot to add that part in. You have to keep in mind that just because someone looks stressed, it doesn't mean they're stressed because of that they're lying to you. It could be something completely different. One time I was talking to a guy, and he supposedly does some stuff he wasn't supposed to. And there's a lot on the line there. He's going to get in a lot of trouble. As I'm talking to him, he starts squishing around the seat. He's moving around a lot, he's crossing his legs, uncrossing his legs. And I said, you seem kind of uncomfortable, man. Is this starting to bother you? Do we need to talk about something different in here? Are we hitting on something? Or I said something like that to let him know I was on to him. And he said, no, I got to pee. So the guy went up and peed and came back, and it was totally normal. So what I took for these big stress things that I thought might be deception, he wasn't being deceptive. He just had to go pee. And he did, and everything was fine. So, all right. What body language cues let you know someone is lying, or for sure someone is lying? There are no absolutes when it comes to body language. Just because someone scratches their nose, or they do one shoulder shrug, or their blink rate goes up one at a time, any one of those things, it doesn't mean anything really. When you say, does that mean they're being deceptive or not? No. When you look at deception, you want to look for more than just one little thing. It may be a twitch they did that time, or maybe their nose itched, or maybe they're cold and that's why they're doing that. So you want to look for clusters of cues, groups of cues. If you see a bunch of these within 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds, then you can go, you know what, this might be deceptive. And then you ask more questions to get to what's going on. Because once you see one of these things, you go, oh, there may be an issue here. As I'm talking to them, something may be going on. And then you press a little bit further. And if you start seeing more and more and more, then you're going down the right road. You're getting to the spot where they're becoming uncomfortable and they're watching what they say. If their blink rate goes way down, that means that would suggest that they're trying to keep an eye on you and make sure you believe what they're saying. If it starts going up a lot, then you can see that would suggest they're really stressed. There's a lot of stress there. So something's up. A lot of people think when you break eye contact, you're lying to someone. Now, we know that's not true, because what your brain wants to do is keep an eye on that person that you're lying to, so you can tell whether or not they believe you. You'll see their expressions go. Because if they do, then you start adding what are called qualifiers, where you make that story sound more believable. So we talked about that in the last question and answer thing, so I won't go into that deep. Can you read a person's emotions by their eye movement? No. You can get a pretty good idea of what's going on, how they feel about something, or if they're thinking. If they look down and go, they look around, maybe I could probably do that. That's one thing. But there are no definitive studies that say you look up and to the left and you're lying, and down to the right and you're creating something, and then up and to the right, all these different things. There are no definitive studies about that. Now you'll have situations where someone like Greg Hartley, who was the at SEER School, he was the guy that ran SEER School. He was the guy that came up with developed a lot of the training for that. And when he would interrogate people all day long, 7, 8, 9 hours a day, and that's all he did for 4 years, then you're going to be able to pick up on some things. You're going to be able to say, you know what, I think there's a connection. When someone is feeling an emotion, they'll look this way or that way. And when they're thinking about something, they'll look down this way or that way. That's my personal experience. That's what I have noticed during this. But at the same time, there are no studies that show all that. However, he can use that because he knows what to look for in those specific situations. So, but I'm under the impression, since there are no studies, and I always say that I don't feel comfortable counting on any of the eye movement stuff, except if someone's looking around a lot. Their eyes go back and forth. They're thinking and checking the room and doing all those things. That would let you know they're stressed and they're thinking a lot. But since there are no definitive studies about that, I can't go in wholeheartedly and say a yes or a no about that. Greg and I actually started doing studies at University of Louisville. We just began putting all that together using fMRI machines and had a bunch of people lined up we were going to ask questions to and use them for the studies. And then COVID hit, so we had to shut all that down, didn't go any further. So we're trying to ramp that back up now. So hopefully we'll get that started again and start heading back down that road so we can find out if there's anything to do with eye movement or an eye placement when someone's being honest or dishonest or whatever. So, but until that time, I'm not going to say, oh, it means this or it means that. I just can't do it, because if I don't have information that I've gone back to the matrix on to make sure that scientists believe that and know that to be a fact, and doctors and the whole bit, I can't give that information to anyone, because a lot of the people that I give information to, if I give them bad information, might get them killed. So I don't want any part of that unless I know for sure there's definitive work done in that area on whatever the situation, the neurological thing we're looking for as far as body language goes. I won't go either way, because I want to make sure I've got the right answers. All right. What is the matching part of matching and mirroring? Well, when it comes to matching and mirroring, it's this. When you mirror someone, you'll quite often see people who are friends or they've been hanging out together, or you may have just met somebody, but you really like that person a lot. They may be somebody famous or whatever. And the person's standing like this. Well, in a couple of minutes before you know it, you'll be standing like that too. Your brain wants to be like that person. You want to imitate that person. And that person's brain wants to see something that looks like them. People like people that are like them and people who sound like them. That's what your brain loves. It loves that. And that's a lot of charismatic people have this down. But when you mirror somebody, you got to be real careful about that, because if you do it wrong, that person may think you're mocking them or making fun of them or something. So if you walk up and somebody's doing this, you can't walk up and go, "Hey man, what's going on? I heard you were doing this on." You can't do that because it's so obvious. You have to work your way into it if you're going to consciously mirror someone so you can connect with them. Okay. So if you walked up, you might have your hands down normal. So, I was talking to so-and-so. He was telling me that whatever it is and blah, blah, blah. And then you move your hand around a little bit and maybe then move up to this way and touch it for a minute like that and then go back down. Then pretty soon you can leave it up there. And a lot of people think if someone scratches, then you need to scratch too. You don't need to do that. You can get close. If they do this, then you just do something like that. Just move your hand a little bit, because it gives their brain the feeling they're triggering that in you and you're connected, right? So that's the thought on it anyway in the research world. Now, the matching part of that, because when you have matching and mirroring, is this. You want to talk like the other person. You want to sound like the other person, okay? So by that, I mean this. Everyone's communication style is unique. Yours is too. Nobody communicates just like you do. However, everyone's communication style falls under one of three categories. You have auditory and visual and then kinesthetic. Okay, so auditory is the way things sound. Visual is the way things look, and kinetic is the way things feel. For example, you'll hear auditory people, they'll talk about how things sound to them. They'll say, "Well, it sounds good to me," or "I hear what you're saying," those kind of things. So what you want to do is listen to someone and say, what kind of words are they using? Are they using the auditory stuff? Are they using visual stuff? They go, "Oh, that looks good to me. Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's, and they'll describe something, but with a lot of colors, or when they're talking about things, they'll add colors or something visual. They'll say it's like a mountain of whatever it was. So these things are visual. So you want to keep that in mind. Be looking for those things. If someone's kinesthetic, that means they talk about things, how things feel. not necessarily emotionally, but how things feel tactically, right? And say, oh, he's got a sticky personality, or oh, how'd it go? A little bit rough, a little bit rough. Those kind of things. So you want to listen for the words that let you know that person is kinesthetic. Once you decide what that person is, then you start peppering your conversation with words out of one of those three categories. That's the matching part. So when you get matching and mirroring happening, and you get in quick, you connect very quickly with that. Um, Charismatic people, a lot of them can do that, and they don't even know they're doing it. Don't even realize they're doing it, but they'll start talking like that person, and they'll start mirroring that person right away. So, and most of them may know that, but from my experience, they don't know when I start talking to them and say, I noticed this or that, and I'll start talking about matching and mirroring, how I see them do it. They'll say, I had no earthly idea that was. Not many of them, but it's my impression, people that I talk to that said they weren't trying to execute those, weren't. It was just natural for them. So some people just have that natural thing where they can get in, connect with people through matching and mirroring. So it could be the way they grew up, or maybe, who knows? Some people are just good at that. Let's see. Now here's another entrepreneur thing. I'm an entrepreneur and my team pitches for funding almost every 2 weeks. What are some body language things that you can tell someone is interested in your pitch? And I guess they're saying, what are some body language cues that you can look for that let you know somebody's interested in what you're talking about during your pitch? Number one, if you're pitching every 2 weeks, man, you got to start pitching more than that. You got to get in there and do a couple a week. If you've just started pitching, go find out all the companies that are into your kind of stuff, and then find out who's not going to invest in you. Decide who's not going to invest in you, and go see those people first. Go see 4 or 5 of those where you know for sure they're not going to invest in you. Go ask around. People will know if you're in the entrepreneur community, and go pitch to them, because it's great practice. Get you in front of people, and you get a hang of what's happening. They're not going to invest, so that gives you another thing. Gives you the confidence knowing they're not going to anyway. I'm just practicing, so it lets you learn how to pitch while you're pitching. It's a great tool to use. The people you know that aren't going to invest, that's who you want to go to first. For 4, 5, 6, hell, you can do 10 of them, do that. That'd be awesome. So when you're looking for, what you're looking for when you're pitching, most people are the impression when you're pitching your idea, and let's say you're pitching to, it could be anywhere from a room of 7 people, 12 people, up to 500 people if there's a bunch of them there, like if it's an auditorium or something. What you're looking for, or what most people think you're looking for, is a person doing this. Smiling, looking at you and go, oh yeah, this is great. That's the person you should just dismiss. They're not there to invest in your thing. They're not interested in it. They're there for some other reason. They're out there schmoozing. Somebody said, come with me to the thing. I got to go watch these pitches. Okay. Or they've never seen pitches before. They'll sit there and smile real big. The person you're looking for, the people you're looking for, are the people that are doing this number. They'll have their arms crossed. They'll be looking at you like this, because they're thinking up here. They're running numbers. The numbers you're talking about, they're running them up there. Quite often you'll see someone with their arm crossed and their legs crossed as well, but they'll have a notebook on it, and they'll have a pen. They'll be looking at you like this. That's what you want. And they'll write stuff down. That's the person who's interested. They're trying to figure out if your numbers are working for them. They're trying to figure out if you know your numbers, if that makes sense, what you're talking about. So you really want to be able to pick the person who you think is, who looks the most disinterested in what you're doing. I mean, make sure they're at least looking at you. If they're not looking at you at all, then obviously they're not into it. But if there's a person looking at you, they're looking like at you like, this guy full of, or is this girl full of, that's the person you want, because they're thinking about what you're talking about. You got them. You've got one on the line there, right? So pay attention to that. The person most likely, and when you pitch at these things, most people think it's like Shark Tank. You go, I've had a couple of people on Shark Tank that I trained, and most people think it's like Shark Tank, the part that ends up on TV where they say, okay, that's great, we'll do that, let's do it. They don't. All you're doing at this pitch is trying to get another meeting. That's all there is. There's so much that goes into all this. Rarely does someone get funded by one pitch. Rarely does that happen. I mean, I've seen it twice, I think. Yeah, I think it was, I saw it twice in all the years that I've worked with entrepreneurs and taught them how to build pitch decks and then how to pitch. And it's just mind blowing. Everyone thinks they bomb when they come out when nobody said, we'll do it. We're going to do it. So you have to go in knowing you're not going to get funded that day. No, you're trying to get another meeting with those people. That's your goal there. That's your goal. You want to meet with them again. So keep that in mind. All right. How do physical barriers like crossed arms affect communication and perception? Well, here's what you got to know. When it comes to crossed arms, most everyone thinks they know what that means. They may think this means you're not into what the person has to say, you're turned off, you're not interested at all. Actually, it means they're probably cold or it's more comfortable for them to do this. It means absolutely nothing most of the time, right? However, the person that you're dealing with doesn't know that. And they've always heard, like you've probably always heard, crossed arms mean you're not into what's happening. So don't cross your arms. Yeah, that kind of thing affects your communication with that person because they may be under the impression you're not into what they have to say. So try not to cross your arms. It's even though it means nothing 90% of the time, don't do it because everybody else thinks it means something. Going back to breaking eye contact when lying, like I said before, most everybody thinks that when you break eye contact, that person is lying or you're lying to them. Not so. So keep that in mind. All right. How can changes in breathing patterns be interpreted in body language analysis? How can changes in breathing patterns be interpreted in body language analysis? Well, here's what we know. When someone is breathing normally, they'll usually breathe from their stomach and or their diaphragm, and everything looks normal. They look calm. But when you get stressed, these muscles in your chest and your stomach tighten up a little bit, and you start breathing from your chest. And then your breaths are a lot slow or are a lot smaller, so they go quicker. So your breathing rate's going to go up. That lets us know there's stress there. So if you're talking with someone and they're breathing a lot and they're breathing heavily and taking these big breaths every now and then, there's probably an issue there. There's probably a lot of stress with what you're talking about, and whatever, I don't know whatever your situation would be, you might want to check into that and start asking more questions about what you're talking about, or know that something's up there. So people start breathing that up in their chest and they start doing it a lot. Their breath rate goes up. Yeah, you got to keep an eye on that. Obviously, when it's low and it's coming from the stomach, you see their stomach going in and out, not as much as their chest. Then I've got a person who's probably fairly relaxed and not worried about much. So not a lot to worry about there. How does body language play a role in deception detection beyond just verbal cues? Well, that's pretty much what we've been talking about the whole time so far. Is the things we're looking for that let us know this person may have an issue with what you're talking about or what you just asked. So it lets you know that they're stressed. And those stress markers would be the compressed lips or stress mouth, that thing where they go like that or like that. You see a lot of adapters, they may scratch their head, they may rub their hand, those types of things. The adapters where you're trying to get rid of that built up stress and tension. The breath rate going up, you're going up so it's fairly fast and it's up in the chest. It's not coming from the diaphragm. A high blink rate, that usually indicates stress. And by high blink rate, I mean, the normal blink rate is about 15, 20 times a minute, right? So if you're blinking 5 times a minute or 7 times a minute, it could, on one hand, you can be relaxed, but on the other hand, it can be that situation we talked about earlier where that person's trying to keep an eye on you because their brain goes, does this person believe us or not? We got to keep an eye on them and see if we see anything that tells us that they don't. Let's see if their expressions change. They look inquisitive or doubtful, those types of things. So, but when the blink rate goes up, let's say it goes past the 15, 20 times a minute, let's say we're going to 30. Sometimes it goes up to 60 and even 90 when you see somebody doing this a lot. But it doesn't sustain the whole minute. It may last, 10 seconds of them doing that or 5 seconds. That lets you know something's up. That when they also have a flutter as they're going, that lets you know something's up. Now, when somebody does do eyebrow or blink flutter where they do that. They may have just gotten some information they didn't want, they didn't like, they weren't expecting, because it's almost like eye blocking, which is you close your eyes. Anything you block your eyes with, it can be when people do this with their hand. You're blocking your eyes. You close your eyes. You're blocking. It's called eye blocking. And quite often, when you start flooding your eyes, we see that as eye blocking as well. But we know something's up there because that stress level just went through the roof. That's why they're blinking a lot. And let's say that you want to count a blink rate. Here's how you do it. I just kind of flew through that really quickly. Here's what you do. Let's say you're watching a video. It's the easiest way to do it. As a person for like 10 seconds, watch the person blink and see how many times they blink in that 10 seconds. Then you just multiply whatever that number is by 6, 60 seconds in a minute. So that'll give you a pretty good idea of how many times a minute they're blinking in that section of time. It won't last the whole minute like I was saying before, but in that little section of time, how many times was that? Was it 40 times, 30 times, 15 times? And then you multiply that by, or altogether in the minute, it would be 60 times or, 40 times. But however many blinks there are in that little window you choose, 5 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever, so you can multiply it. That's how you do it. How many times they blink in that window, then multiply it by 6 or multiply it by 12 if you go 5 seconds. So here's a good one. In what ways can individuals' body language impact their personal brand or professional image? Wow, that's a great one. Your image is everything when it comes to a brand, your personal brand. It's how you dress, it's how you talk to people, it's the type of language you use, it's your sentence structure, the type of words you use. There's so many things that come in with that. How much do you move? How much do you move? There's let's say you have a person who sits around, and as you're talking to them, they're making all these little moves like this and scooching around and they're moving, and there's 5 or 6 people in the room, but they keep doing things like this constantly, moving around. That's not the alpha of the room. That's not the person in charge 90% of the time. The person that's in charge moves the least. They don't move a whole lot at all. Not because they're going, I'm not going to move, I'm going to be like a statue, but because it gives you the impression they're under control. If they're under control, if they have themselves under control, they've got everything else under control. So that's why we get uneasy around people who are on drugs and they get all fidgety and moving around and stuff. You can spot them because they stick out like a red flag, and you become uncomfortable around them because you're not sure what they're going to do. You keep looking at them because they don't look stable. They don't look like they're in charge of themselves. So they may not be in charge of being able, since they're not in charge of themselves, they may not have their head together and may not act the way they should act in public or toward you. In other words, they may freak out and do something to you. Who knows? I don't know. Can body language cues be consciously controlled or manipulated? All right. This is really good because everybody's trying to do that. We're talking about how to do that, right? If you're going to try, let's say you're trying to show an emotion that you don't really have, and you're going to try to be happy about something or sad about something. The one where they fake being sad is my favorite because fake doesn't stick. Fake emotions or a fake emotion you put on your face isn't going to stick. You can get close and it'll stay there for a second, then it'll start fading. And you don't think it's fading because you're thinking, I'm sad. I've got to be sad. And then it'll turn to something else as you think about other things because that true emotion isn't there, right? So you can attempt to manipulate your what you're showing as an emotion. But if somebody like me is there, or you probably now, you'll know that something's going on. There's an issue there because their expression is fading. We see that a lot when we're talking about interrogations, and in training I show it a lot as well, because you'll see someone go, or Amber Heard, if you'll watch that court case when she was on the stand, she'd go from being real sad to back to normal like that. And when you go from being real sad and you're going to be back to normal, it takes a little while to do that. You sort of slowly morph from one to the other. You don't go boom and then back to normal so quickly, but that's what she was doing. And even though you may not see it and go, oh, I saw her expression change, your brain's going to go, something's not right about that. Why does that look fake to me? That's why, because it's fake. So, and she would do these big emotional upheavals of, and then back to normal right after it. But trust me, fake won't stick. Those emotions don't stay on your face, and they're easily spotted by anybody watching you more than 10, 15 seconds. Okay, here's a classic. How can you differentiate between a genuine smile, and a forced one? Well, everybody always talks about all these little wrinkles you see inside their eyes. If you see the wrinkles, that's a real smile. No, not true. It's not the wrinkles themselves, it's the way the wrinkles look. See, if I was to smile and go, looks fake because I said I was going to do it. But these little wrinkles here, I can do that. Anybody can wrinkle their a little wrinkle right there. But what has to happen is that wrinkle has to come in at this angle here, like this, because that's something that your brain is doing. Your brain makes that happen. You don't do it. You can't do it. But once you see that closing in on the wrinkle coming in like this at an angle like that from this side, then you can pretty much go, that's pretty much a real smile. There are other things they'll tell you. These little parts of your face in here, how far in do they go? Is it just, or is it, do they indent really deeply? Right here under the orbicularis oculi. I'm not going to get into all the definitions of muscles and stuff because it's so boring, but that's what these things are up here. And there are different things quite often you can just tell when somebody's giving you a real smile. I know some people in the entertainment business who practice their smile so much because every picture they take, it looks exactly the same when they're getting their picture made with people after their show. And it looks the very same every time. And I'm like, and I remember one time I said, hey, man, I'm going to tell you who it was. But you go, oh, my God. I said, hey, man, every time you smile, it looks how are you doing that? How do you pull that off? He said, it took me 2 years to be able to do that. He said, I got in the mirror and I found the smile that I liked. And that's the one I show everybody, unless I'm really smiling. He said, and as you know, my real smile makes me look goofy. And he did look goofy when he smiled and he laughed. He's one of those people that had the weird laugh and the weird smile. It just was odd looking. There's a picture of me and Mark Bowden on, I guess it's the behavior panel community page where we're laughing. And it's just the ugliest laughing you've ever seen in your life. We both look like this. It's horrible. But that's what this guy looked like every time he laughed or smiled real big. That's what he looked like, and he couldn't help it. But he got in the mirror, I guess, for 2 years, and he found the sweet spot for his smile. Now, having said that, yeah, you can tell it's a fake smile because there are certain little things that don't show up in there the way they should, because the smile goes up too far, and there's not those indentations there that should be in there. His eyes do squint, but they don't squint the right way, and that's fine, because it's he's got to do that 150 times a day practically. So I get it, I totally get it. But he's getting lines there where he does it all the time. Those lines are sticking where he does his fake smile, and it's so I give him guff about it all the time. All right, what common body language mistakes do people make in job interviews? Well, they don't look relaxed. When you go in for a job interview, you want to look like you're the person that can make it happen. You can pull that off with no problem at all. If you look all nervous, and by nervous, I mean sitting around jiggling your legs so that you look like you're doing this as you're sitting there, or if you're chewing on your mouth or doing some of these things you talk about, itching your nose every 2 minutes or goofing your face, that shows you're not in control of yourself. So you want to give the impression that you're in control. You're the person that's in charge of you. And not only are you in charge of you, you can take charge of anything. So that's the vibe you want to give them. And another thing, when you speak at these things, some people, they talk too loud because it sounds, you don't want to do that. You just want to have a good, solid tone when you're talking to them. And make sure it doesn't go from real loud to fairly quiet. You want to keep it fairly stable the whole time. So that's another key to that. And when they ask you a question, yeah, look them right in the eye, but feel relaxed enough to look around as you're thinking about something, and take the time to think about answers. So they say, what about this? Have you ever da-da-da? Don't just burst out. Yeah, I did so and so and so. Think about the question, not too long, because it can get weird. When they ask you something, go, yeah, what I do is this. Like you've thought about the question and then you're answering. That's really important, because if not, they know it's your stock answer and you're ready for it, which you are. You want to be ready, but you don't want to look like you're prepared to give that specific answer. So it's important to be able to execute these things so they look normal. So you look normal. So they don't have anything to worry about. So you look like the person of confidence that they can turn whatever it is at that place over to you and you can handle it with no problem. That's really important. How does body language contribute to first impressions? We talked about this last time during the questions as well. And that first 6 to 9 to 12 seconds, that's the most important time you've got to impress someone. Your mom and dad were right. First impressions are everything because you can't make a second first impression. So it is important because when people see you in that first 6 to 9 to 12 seconds and their brain starts making a decision about you, they're making it quite often before they've even met you. They may have seen you out at the water cooler and you didn't know they were the ones you were going to meet with, but you at the water cooler, at the water fountain. You may have been getting a drink of water and they looked over and saw you standing there and you're going, before you got a drink of water or afterwards, you've always got to have a pleasant look on your face when you're around a place or in public. And you might run into somebody that you know, or you never know who's looking at you, So having a pleasant resting face is really important. And it's tough to get a pleasant resting face because you have to practice it in the mirror. And it can't be something that you have to, it's almost like a little smile you have to sit around with. It's not like on the Kardashians. You ever see that? I've only seen like one episode, but I never sat around and watched a whole episode, but I watched parts of it. And every time I turn it on, people have this thing that I call extra face, where they're sitting there looking like this. Nothing going on around them. Supposedly they're by themselves. They're waiting on somebody and they're just going, they got this really weird smile on their face, right? And you usually see that with extras in movie shoots and on TV shows. If you look at restaurant scenes on a sitcom, if you're watching any of those like Seinfeld or any of them, look at the people sitting around in there. They're pretending to talk. They're not really talking because there are microphones on. So they pretend to talk and they're all doing this. They all have that really weird look on their face. So you need to have a look that's not that really weird look, but still makes you look like everything's okay. Like wherever you are, that's the place to be. So you want to have a nice, pleasant little look on your face all the time when you're out in public, especially if you're in an office building or you're going to a meeting. Because let's say you go to a meeting, all right, and it's across town. So you leave early and you get there early for some reason. And you've got, 20 minutes before you even have to go in, like to say, okay, hey, I'm here. So you get out of your car and you look down at your phone, you get your phone out and you look at it and you go, you pull one of these and you go, yeah. You start doing that kind of thing. Cut to the second floor. You don't know that the guy you're meeting with or the woman you're meeting with is up there on the second floor. And they just happen to be looking down the parking lot. And they're standing there with one of their friends. And they see you doing that like that. And one says to the other, hey, man, is that your 2 o'clock? And you go, and they go, yeah. They've already got a first impression of you because of the way you look in the parking lot. When I'm dealing with attorneys and I'm dealing with their clients and we're going to court, right? What I tell them, as soon as they pull up, as soon as they hit that parking lot, you have a pleasant look on your face. Don't look mean. Don't look too happy. Just look like everything's okay. Just look at a nice, pleasant little look on your face because the jurors will see you if they're coming in too. Okay. So you have to, and you won't know it's them. They won't know it's you, but they'll see you and they'll remember that. And there's the person in the parking lot doing that thing with their phone. So it's really important. If you think you're going to be around people where someone will know you, have that pleasant little, or have your resting face together. Figure out what it is. It doesn't take long, really. Go in the morning, get up and go in the bathroom. And when you look in the mirror, find your resting face and tell your husband or your wife or your person, hey, look, I'm going to have to look weird for a few minutes and try to find my resting face. Here's why. Or just shut the door and don't tell them. And find out what it is and practice it for a while. Practice it for a week, every day. And when you're walking by a mirror, do your resting face and look at it and see how it looks. Because that's going to help you. I promise you, that's going to come into play at some point. If it probably has already, you just didn't know it. And you may be one of those people that look pleasant all the time. I know people like that. And there are people like me who just look like they have, were a hatchet murderer just trying to hide in public. So as a resting face, mine's horrible. But get a good resting face, practice it. And that'll help a lot. Okay. I think that's about all the questions we got for this time. And I'll see you next time.